She was laughing. I was pouring gravy. Then my phone buzzed. Turn on the camera now. What? Why now? Who sent it? Before I could blink, the door slammed open. My daughter dropped her fork. A man stood there breathing hard, holding a folder. How did he know our names? Why was his hand bleeding? And why? Why did he call me by my maiden name? If you want to know what really happened, stay with me until the end. Before we dive into this shocking mystery, may God bless you if you write amen in the comments and if you love gripping, breathtaking stories. Don't forget to subscribe. They say a mother's intuition is sharper than any detective's hunch. That night, as I was lighting candles on the dinner table and humming along to a song Margaret used to love, something in the air shifted. The meatloaf was still warm, the potatoes just right, and Melissa's laughter, oh, how it filled the room, like it used to when she was 10, brought a flicker of joy to my tired heart. Then my phone buzzed. Turn on the camera now. There's going to be a show. A text from an unknown number. 7 words that sliced right through the warmth of the evening. I blinked, reading it again. My fingers trembled as I turned the screen toward the table lamp. The message stared back at me. Bold. Stark. What's that? Mom, Melissa asked, reaching across the table. Her voice was sweet, casual, completely unaware of the shift in my heartbeat. Nothing important. I lied, but my stomach knew better. She grabbed my hand, playful as ever. Let me see. You're always hiding your texts, like you're in the CIA or something. Before I could answer, the front door burst open. I shot up from my chair. The door banged against the hallway wall. My heart thudded so hard I thought it might leap from my chest. But it wasn't a stranger. It was the wind. Or so I told myself. Melissa laughed nervously. Well, that was dramatic. But something didn't feel right. I walked toward the door to close it, and that's when I noticed it. The envelope on the floor. No stump. No name. Just Susan Carter scrawled across it in thick, black ink. My name. I picked it up and opened it with trembling fingers. A check, made out to cash. $5,000. And the signature, it looked like mine, except it wasn't. I would know. That little flourish I'd always done at the end of my name was slightly crooked. Forced. Like someone had tried too hard. My knees nearly gave out. Melissa had followed me to the door. Mom. What is it? I held the check up, like it was radioactive. Do you know anything about this? Her face pallid. It was the kind of look children get when you catch them sneaking cookies from the jar. Except this wasn't a cookie. This was a crime. I can explain. Melissa, I said, my voice colder than I intended. Did you forge my name? Her eyes darted from my face to the check and back again. It's not what you think. I was going to tell you. When, after you cashed it, I walked past her and sat down slowly, placing the check on the table like it was a fragile piece of glass. Melissa, what is going on? She sat across from me, suddenly, very still. I needed help. You wouldn't understand. The bills, the pressure, the rent. You could have asked me. I did. After Dad died, everything changed. You were so distant. I didn't want to burden you again. So you stole from me instead. The word stole hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Toxic. Unspoken until now. It's not stealing, she whispered. You're my mom. My hands were trembling again. And what does that mean? That you get to forge checks? Pretend to be me? I just thought if I could get ahead of the bills, pay off the worst ones, I could fix everything before you found out. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This wasn't the little girl in pigtails who used to beg for one more bedtime story. This was a woman drowning in her own mess, trying to pull me under with her. Her voice cracked. Please, Mom, don't look at me like that. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The clock ticked. The meatloaf grew cold. And the chasm between us grew wider than it had ever been. Outside, the wind picked up again. The candle flickered on the table. And somewhere deep inside me, a quiet voice, maybe Margaret's, whispered, "This is only the beginning." I couldn't sleep that night. The check lay on the kitchen table like a wound left open. Impossible to ignore. I sat in the living room, wrapped in the knitted blanket Margaret made years ago, staring at the photo on the mantel, the three of us at Cannon Beach. Melissa had been 16, laughing into the wind, her father's arm around her shoulder, my fingers tangled in hers. We looked so whole. Now, that memory felt like someone else's life. At 3:17 a.m., I gave up trying to rest and turned on the lamp by the old recliner. My reading glasses were still on the side table. I picked up the check again, inspecting every stroke. I'd written thousands of them in my life. Rent, groceries, Melissa's tuition checks when she went to Oregon State. But this one, the loop in the S was too tight. The C in Carter tilted too far left. Someone had tried to mimic my style, but didn't quite understand the rhythm. I reached for the small, fireproof safe beneath the stairs. My hands were shaking as I turned the dial left 32, right 15, left 7. Inside, I found my old checkbooks and bank statements. I pulled them out, heart thudding in my ears. 37 minutes later, I had a list. 3 checks I didn't remember writing. One for Fem, Ling, dated 3 days ago, the one on the table. Another for $2, Wu Bei, cashed 2 weeks prior. And one from August, San, Lambe, made out to a name I didn't recognize. Glenway Consolidated Services. The handwriting on all 3 was close, very close, but not mine. It felt like falling through ice. 1 minute you're walking on a frozen pond, and the next, you're underwater, gasping. I'm not sure which way is up. At 6:11 a.m., I made a pot of strong coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and wrote everything down. Names, dates, amounts. I drew arrows between them, trying to create a map out of madness. My breath fogged the window pane beside me. Melissa hadn't just written 1 check. She'd forged at least 3, maybe more. I called the bank as soon as their customer service line opened. A polite young man named Darren listened patiently while I explained that I'd found checks I never wrote. He asked me to come in. I bring any questionable documents I had and request a fraud review on my account. I'll schedule you with Sarah Wilson, he said. She's our fraud and loan specialist. She'll walk you through the process. Loan specialist. My mouth went dry. I didn't apply for any loans. Well, she'll check everything with you. Just bring your ID and the documents. I ended the call and looked at the calendar. The 19th of November, a Tuesday, the day everything would fall apart. And the bank building on 5th Avenue was all glass and stone, too clean, too bright for the mess I carried in my purse. I felt like I was dragging shadows into a place built for spreadsheets and polished shoes. Sarah Wilson was young, early 30s, blonde, with a professional kindness in her smile. She ushered me into her office and closed the door gently behind us. Mrs. Carter, I understand you're concerned about suspicious activity on your account. I nodded, laying the copies of the forged checks on her desk. I didn't write these. She studied them carefully. Let's take a look at your full account history. I'll also pull up any active loans under your name. Just to be thorough. I froze. There shouldn't be any. She didn't respond. Just typed something into her computer, then turned the screen slightly so I could see. My breath caught in my throat. There it was. A mortgage loan for $500. Ling, taken out 6 months ago. The document bore my name, my address, my signature, except I'd never signed it. This isn't real, I whispered. I'm afraid it is, Sarah said gently. Mrs. Carter, there are also 2 personal loans. $20, 0, 0, 0, and $8. 505 credit cards opened in your name over the past year. Total balance. She hesitated. Roughly $700. Ling. I felt like the room was tilting. My ears rang. I reached for the edge of her desk. I didn't. I would never. I'm a retired teacher. That's my house. My only house. I understand. Unfortunately, these appear to be forged documents, but the forgeries are very advanced. Whoever did this knew how to replicate your handwriting perfectly. Sarah offered a glass of water. I took it with trembling hands. I think Melissa did this. I'm very sorry, she said quietly. Family cases are always the most difficult. But Mrs. Carter, if you want the bank to help you, You'll need to file a police report for identity theft. I nodded slowly. Can you print everything? I asked. Every document with my name on it. Every loan. Every credit card. I need to see it. She clicked a few keys, then stood to use the printer by the door. A thick stack of papers emerged, more pages than I could have imagined. Each one was a piece of evidence. Each one, a betrayal. She slid them into a large envelope and handed it to me. You'll need to act quickly. Some of these loans are already in default. Legal notices will be issued soon. I stood. My legs felt hollow. Thank you, Sarah. Truly. I'll keep your file open, she said softly. Please let me know how you decide to proceed. And back home, I spread the documents across the dining room table, the same one where Melissa and I had eaten meatloaf just 2 nights ago. The candle wax still clung to the linen runner, but now the table was a crime scene. Each loan had a date, each credit card an application. June, July, August, September, all after Margaret died. I pressed a trembling hand to my chest. While I'd been grieving, planning the funeral, learning to sleep alone, Melissa had been filling out forms in my name. The betrayal settled over me like fog. I picked up the phone and called the only person I knew who might understand. Linda answered on the second ring. Hey, Suze, you okay? No, I whispered. I need to see you. On my way. Come. Linda's house smelled like old books and fresh coffee. She was still in her NYPD sweatshirt, though she'd been retired for years. When I laid out the documents on her kitchen counter, her eyes narrowed. Jesus, she muttered. This is serious. Susan, she's my daughter. Linda, my only child. I know, but she also committed grand larceny, identity theft, forgery. This isn't just stealing lunch money. This is federal crime. I looked up at her, eyes burning. What do I do? She poured me a fresh cup of coffee and sat down beside me. You need to protect yourself. You file that report. We can go to the precinct tomorrow. I still know a few detectives on the force. We'll talk to them, quietly. No drama. Yet. But we build the case. I stared down at the paper in my hands. Melissa's name. My signature. My address. My Melissa wouldn't do this. I whispered. Linda put a hand on mine. Maybe she would. Maybe she already did. It had been 6 days since I sat in Linda's kitchen, staring down at the truth like it was fire, and I'd already been burned. The bank papers were now stacked in a manila folder on my desk, sealed like a coffin. I hadn't spoken to Melissa, not since the night I held the forged check in my hands and watched my daughter pretend not to know what I'd found. I hadn't eaten much. Sleep came in fragments. Even my knitting. Always a comfort lay untouched on the armchair. Then the phone rang. Hi. Mom, she said, her voice soft, softer than I'd heard it in months. I didn't know what to say. I've been thinking about our last conversation. Silence stretched between us. I'm sorry, she continued, barely above a whisper. I was scared, and I said terrible things. I want to fix this. I really do. Can we talk? In person. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe I still had a daughter underneath all the lies. I made your favorite, she added. Pot roast, like Dad used to make. My throat tightened. Come tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. I looked across the living room at the framed photo of Margaret smiling in her garden, at the quiet house that once held music and warmth. I'll come, I said. Dude. I spent the next day trying not to get my hopes up. I ironed my blouse twice, repacked the manila folder twice, considered, then rejected the idea of bringing the engagement ring Margaret had wanted Melissa to have someday. This wasn't someday. Still, I did pick up white roses, Melissa's favorite since she was small. The florist on 7th smiled when I explained. Yellow wrap, white blooms. I said, it's for a second chance. She tied the bow herself. I was in. Melissa's apartment was on the 10th floor of a modern building downtown. A doorman I didn't recognize waved me in. The elevator was quiet. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked hopeful, too hopeful. A fool in pressed slacks and soft shoes, clutching flowers and dreams like they'd never been shattered. The door opened before I knocked. Mom, she smiled. opening her arms. "You look wonderful." She wore the blue dress I'd bought her last Christmas, the same one she'd laughed at for being too modest. The apartment smelled like rosemary and beef. Candles flickered on the table. China, she never used, sat neatly in place. "It looks beautiful," I said, stepping in. I wanted it to be special. I handed her the flowers. She buried her face in them, breathing deep. "White roses," she murmured. "You remembered. Always." She took my coat, set the manila folder aside too casually, and poured me a glass of wine. "Merlot, your favorite." We sat, talked about small things. The weather, her job, how the city had changed since spring. But something was wrong. She kept glancing at the folder. Her hands fidgeted. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Finally, after the second glass of wine, she leaned forward. "Mom, about the documents. The loans. I know it looks bad. It is bad. Melissa. I know. I do." Her voice wavered. "But I have a plan. A real plan. I can pay it back. All of it." My heart skipped. "You can." She nodded. "Fast. But I need a little help to get started." "Seed money." "Really?" My stomach dropped. "How much?" 100,000. Just to get things rolling. I found a business opportunity. And it's solid. With the right investment, I could turn it around. Pay back everything. Plus interest. I set my fork down. The pot roast, once a symbol of family, tasted like betrayal. "Melissa," I said slowly, "you forged my signature. You mortgaged my house. You've stolen nearly $750,000. And now you're asking for more. It's not stealing." "Mom," her voice sharpened, "it's investing. You want this fixed." "Right. Let me fix it. By giving you more money. By helping me help you." I stood. Her smile cracked. "I came here because I wanted to believe you were sorry," I said, voice trembling. "Not because I wanted to be tricked again." Her eyes flared. "You never believed in me." "Not really. You were always just waiting for me to fail." "That's not true." Dad understood. He would have helped. I stepped away from the table. My hands were shaking. "He's not here." "Melissa." "No," she said bitterly. "But you are, with your checks and your savings and your perfect little pension. And I'm drowning. Is that fair?" "Life isn't fair, but that doesn't give you permission to destroy mine." She moved fast, reached for the folder on the side table. "Then maybe I'll just keep this." I lunged. We collided, both grabbing the handle. "Give it to me." "No." Her face was inches from mine. And for a moment, I saw her. Not the child I'd raised, but the woman who'd mastered manipulation. Then a buzz. My phone. "Turn on your camera. There's going to be a show." The same number. The same message. The front door burst open. 2 police officers entered. "Melissa Carter." One of them called. She froze. "Ma'am." "Step away from the folder." "No. She's trying to ruin me." Linda stepped in behind the officers. Her expression unreadable. She looked at me. Then at Melissa. "It's over," she said quietly. "You called them." Melissa screamed. "No," I said. She did what I should have done. The officers moved in. One of them gently pried the folder from Melissa's grip. The other read her rights. As they cuffed her, she looked at me, eyes wide, tearless. "I hope you're happy now. I hope you learned something." They let her out. The candles still flickered on the table. The pot roast sat half-eaten on our plates. And I stood there, holding a folder filled with truth, watching the door close behind. The only child I'd ever had. The house was too quiet. Even the floorboards, which used to creak under Margaret's slippers or Melissa's hurried steps, seemed to hold their breath. I sat at the kitchen table, the manila folder beside me like a sleeping beast. The wineglass Melissa had poured for me still sat half full. The candlelight from earlier had melted into twisted, waxy ghosts. Outside, someone's wind chime clinked against the cold. Inside, my chest ached with a silence I'd never known. She's gone. Not to college. Not on a trip. Gone. Inapatrolkar. Handcuffed. Accused. Guilty. I pressed my hands together to stop them from trembling. My phone buzzed again. A text from Linda. "I'm sorry it had to happen like this. I'm here if you need anything. I stared at the screen. The words were kind, true, necessary, but nothing could soften the fact that I'd just watched my daughter get arrested in her apartment while dinner cooled and candles flickered like memories. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I walked through each room of the house as if seeing it for the first time. I touched the arm of the couch Melissa used to curl up on with her science books, stood at the window where Margaret and I once watched fireworks on the 4th of July, paused in the hallway where Melissa drew on the wallpaper when she was 5. My hand trailed across those faint, scrubbed lines. I'd tried to clean them once, but Margaret stopped me. "Let it be," she said, smiling. "One day, we'll want to remember that she was small enough to do that." I remembered. It hurt. And craze. At dawn, I made tea. Black, strong, no sugar. The way Margaret liked it. I sat at the table and opened one of the old journals I'd begun keeping after Margaret passed. Writing had become a quiet friend. Not the kind that offered advice, but the kind that listened. The 20th of November, 2024. Melissa is gone. The house feels heavier, not lighter. I watched her become someone I didn't know, and I didn't stop her. That might be my biggest failure. She looked at me tonight like I was the traitor, like I'd destroyed her. But I wasn't the one who signed my name a dozen times in ink that wasn't mine. I wasn't the one who used grief as currency. Still, I keep wondering if I could have saved her, if I missed a sign, or a chance, or a moment where a different word might have turned her left instead of right. Maybe that's what being a mother is, blaming yourself, even when you shouldn't. I closed the journal and set it down gently. My tea had gone cold. 3 days later, I received a visit. A tall man in plain clothes stood on my porch, badge clipped discreetly to his belt. "Mrs. Carter?" he asked. I nodded, gripping the doorframe. "I'm Detective Morrison, Portland Financial Crimes Unit. May I come in?" I stepped aside, and he walked into my living room like he'd done it before. His eyes scanned the mantel, the furniture, the neatness that masked the chaos inside. "I'll be handling your daughter's case," he said. Linda Martinez provided substantial evidence, surveillance photos, timelines, statements. I nodded. He opened a leather notebook. "But we'll still need your cooperation. If you're willing, I am. We'll need a full statement, a timeline of when you first noticed irregularities, documentation, correspondence, anything that shows your lack of consent. I've kept everything." He offered a faint smile. "That's rare. Most people in your position are too emotional to document. But you're a teacher." "Right. Was. Teachers always take notes." I retrieved the folder. We sat at the table, the same table where I used to serve Melissa oatmeal before school, and began to reconstruct the year my daughter dismantled my life. End peer. 2 hours later, the detective stood. "This will help a great deal," he said. "We're building a strong case. But I want to prepare you. The process will be slow. Court date, pre-trial hearings, possible plea deals. I understand." He hesitated. "She may contact you. We've seen this before. The accused reaches out, tries to manipulate sympathy. She already tried." He nodded slowly. "If she does again, document everything." He handed me a card. "Call me. Anytime." I saw him out, closed the door behind him, and leaned against it. I felt older than my years. End of quote. That evening, Linda came over. She brought soup. It tasted like nothing, but I ate it anyway. We didn't talk much. She just sat with me while the news played on mute in the background. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "You did the right thing. Suze, I don't feel like it." "You will." I stared into my bowl. "Margaret warned me once," I said. She said, "Melissa loved money more than people." I told her she was being harsh. Linda sighed. "We all want to believe the best in our children. She used to be so good, so sweet. She still might be, somewhere, but not now. Not like this." I nodded, but it felt hollow. Linda set her spoon down. "You saved yourself. You saved others. If we hadn't acted, she would have moved on to another victim, another parent, probably, or someone's grandfather. It happens more than you think." The weight of it all settled into my bones. I just wanted to believe she could change. Then believe that this might be what makes her change. I didn't reply. I just stared out the window as the wind rustled the autumn leaves across the porch. End quote. Later that night, I stood in front of the mantel, holding the engagement ring Margaret had worn for 42 years, the same one we'd set aside for Melissa. I opened the small velvet box, stared at the delicate band, and then gently closed it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The first whisper came at the grocery store. I was reaching for a can of soup when I saw two women from the neighborhood, Martha and Jean, standing by the bread aisle. I'd known them for 20 years. We'd done cookie swaps together, decorated the community center for Christmas, even took turns watching each other's kids back in the 90s. They stopped talking when I turned the corner. Just stopped. Jean offered a tight smile. Martha looked at her shoes. I nodded. Morning. They both mumbled greetings before hurrying off like I'd walked in, carrying scandal on my coat sleeves. I stood there, holding the soup, wondering if this was how it would be. Now kindness diluted into awkward politeness. Small talk, dying mid-sentence, friends unsure if they could say anything without stepping on broken glass. Oh, it got worse at church. Reverend Samuel said all the right things during the sermon about compassion, forgiveness, justice. But afterward, in the fellowship hall, the air buzzed with something colder. People looked, but didn't approach. Only Mrs. Harland came close, placing a gentle hand on my arm. You're brave, Susan. Just know that. I nodded, but my throat closed up before I could answer. I left early, the casserole I brought still untouched on the table. 1. Back home. The mailbox held the usual: bills, a gardening catalog I hadn't requested, and one small envelope addressed in handwriting I recognized instantly. Melissa. The return address was the Multnomah County Detention Center. I stared at it for a long time, still sitting in the driver's seat, the engine ticking as it cooled. Leaves scraped along the windshield. Part of me wanted to tear it open right there. Another part wanted to throw it away, pretend it never came. But I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and walked away. It took 2 days before I could bring myself to read it. Dear Mom, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I wouldn't blame you if you never opened this. But I'm writing anyway because sitting in this place makes everything clearer, even the things I never wanted to see. I don't know what to say that could ever make up for what I've done. I've been in here for 8 days. They don't let us out much. The food is awful. The walls are gray, and everything smells like bleach. But the worst part is thinking about what I did to you. What I did to Dad's name? I don't know when I became this person. I swear, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It started with one card, just a small one, and I told myself I'd pay it back. But it got out of hand. The bills stacked up, and I was too proud to ask for help the right way. You were always so strong, so sure of everything. I didn't think you'd understand. That was my mistake. One of many. I miss you. I miss our kitchen talks. The way you make tea when you're worried. I miss Margaret's photo by the mantel and the sound of your slippers in the hallway. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly. Love. Melissa. I read it twice. The first time, I didn't feel anything. The second time, I cried. As way do. Linda read the letter 3 days later. She was careful with it, holding it like it might bite. She's good with words, she said finally. Always was. You think she means it? I think she might. But that doesn't mean you should trust her again. I don't. I want to. Linda nodded, folding the letter back into the envelope. Of course you do. You're her mother. Wanting is part of the job. She says she didn't mean for it to go this far. No one ever does. But it still went that far, didn't it? I stared at the window. Rain was starting again. Portland, gray and endless. She misses home. Linda's voice was gentler now. So do a lot of people in there. Doesn't mean they belong here yet. 1. That night, I placed the letter in my journal. Between the pages dated the 24th of November, she wrote me. I scribbled. She says she's sorry. That she didn't mean it. But I don't know if it's remorse or regret. I don't know how to tell the difference anymore. On Sunday, The phone rang. It was the County Detention Center. This is a call from an inmate at Multnomah County Jail. To accept, press 1. Me finger hovered. Then I pressed. Mom. Her voice cracked. Hello, Melissa. I didn't think you'd pick up. I wasn't sure I would. I just wanted to hear your voice. Silence. Mom. I read your letter. And I believe you're sorry. But that doesn't change what you did. I know. But I'm listening. That's all I can promise right now. I'll take it. She whispered. We spoke for 6 minutes and 23 seconds. Nothing profound. Just words. A beginning. Maybe. Or an echo. But when I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't break. I just sat quietly, watching the kettle steam on the stove, and thought, this time, I'm the one who decides how far it goes. There's something surreal about sitting across from a lawyer while talking about your daughter as a criminal. It was raining again, Portland's favorite mood. I sat in a narrow conference room with beige walls and a coffee machine that looked older than I was. Across the table was Eleanor Frost, the attorney assigned by the district attorney's office to work with victims in fraud cases. She was in her 50s, dressed like she walked straight out of a courtroom drama navy suit. Silver pen, eyes sharp, but not unkind. I've reviewed the financial documents Detective Morrison provided, she said. You kept impeccable records. That will help our case immensely. I nodded, fingers clasped tight in my lap. I'll need your official statement, preferably in writing. But we'll also record it on video. If it goes to trial, your testimony will be key. There's always a chance of a plea deal, she explained, especially when the accused is a first-time offender with no prior record. She's not a first-time offender, I said. She's just never been caught before. Eleanor's eyes flickered up, then down again. Regardless, the prosecution will consider the options, but your cooperation ensures we don't lose the leverage we need. She's my daughter. I know. I don't want her in prison for years. I understand. But I also don't want her walking away like nothing happened. Eleanor closed her notebook and leaned forward. Let me be clear. Mrs. Carter, what your daughter did, identity theft, document forgery, bank fraud, these are not minor crimes. The amount alone puts her into felony territory. $700,000 is not a misunderstanding. I felt the words like gravel in my throat. I'm not asking you to punish her, she continued. I'm asking you to protect yourself. And others. I nodded slowly. I'm in. You died. That night, I found an old shoebox in the back of my closet. Inside were photos from Melissa's high school year's homecoming, Halloween. Her graduation cap crooked on her head. I held them carefully, like they might tear from the weight of memory. The girl in those photos was smiling. Her eyes still held wonder. I wondered when it had changed, and whether that version of her still lived somewhere, buried under years of choices and silence. And any plies. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. This is Caroline Hughes. The voice said, I'm representing Melissa Carter. I froze in my kitchen, hand gripping the edge of the counter. I'd like to request a meeting with your permission. My client has asked me to reach out and attempt a dialogue about what? About possible restitution, about options. I already have an attorney. This wouldn't be legal negotiation, Caroline clarified. Just a conversation, mother to daughter. She's hoping for understanding. He hesitated, then said, I'll think about it. And age. Linda was furious. You're not seriously considering it. Are you? She asked, pacing my living room. She just wants to talk. She's not talking. Her lawyer is. Maybe Melissa can't say what she wants to in a letter or a phone call. Susan, you already did the hard thing. You let her be arrested. You gave your statement. Don't undo that by walking into another trap. He won't. I said, I'll be careful. Linda stopped pacing. You still want her to be the little girl in those pictures. I know she's not, but I still love her. Linda's voice softened. I know. End of quote. We met at the detention center in a small visitation room with plastic chairs and a table bolted to the floor. Caroline Hughes was already there, with a file folder and a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Melissa entered wearing a beige jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, no jewelry. Just her. She looked smaller somehow. "Hi, Mom." I nodded. "Hello, Melissa." Caroline spoke first. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I'd like to keep this brief and respectful." I kept my eyes on Melissa. She did the same. "I just wanted to see you," she said softly. "I've seen enough of you lately," I replied. It wasn't cruel. Just true. She flinched but didn't argue. "I'm sorry. You've said that. I mean it." "Then tell the truth. All of it." In court, Melissa blinked. "They're saying I might get 5 years. I know. I can't go to prison." "Mom, you should have thought of that before. I'm your daughter." "Yes," I said. "And I was your mother when you forged my name. When you took out a mortgage on the house your father and I built. When you drained the retirement fund I spent 40 years growing." She looked down. Caroline cleared her throat. "We're hoping for a plea deal. With your cooperation, a character statement. Perhaps the judge may consider probation and restitution in lieu of extended prison time." I turned to her. "Restitution, yes. Melissa has some assets, not much, but with time and work." She had time and work before. I interrupted. "She chose shortcuts. Lies." Caroline pursed her lips. "Then you're not open to helping reduce the sentence." I looked at Melissa. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was just waiting. Like this was a negotiation. "I'm not here to decide your sentence," I said. "That's the court's job. But I won't lie for you, and I won't protect you from consequences you created." Melissa's shoulders dropped. "So that's it. That's it. I thought you might still want to help me." "I did help you," I whispered. "For years, and it almost destroyed me." I stood. "I hope you find your way back, Melissa, but I can't lead you anymore." I left the room without looking back. Caroline didn't follow. And at her. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine. Margaret's ring still sat on the windowsill, untouched, since the night I almost gave it away. I stared at it for a long time. Then, carefully, I slipped it back into the velvet box and locked it in the safe. Some things were not meant to be handed over. Not yet. Not like this. The headline landed like a punch to the gut. "Local woman accused in $700 Kelvin fraud scheme. Mother uncovers the crime." It was right there, above the fold in the Portland Gazette, with a grainy photo of Melissa being escorted out of her apartment in handcuffs, her eyes downcast, my housecoat visible in the corner of the frame. My name was in the second paragraph. Susan Carter, Lushar, a retired school teacher, contacted authorities after discovering multiple forged checks and unauthorized loans taken out in her name. No mention of Margaret. No mention of loss or grief or motherhood. Just uncovered the crime, as if I'd been clever, as if I hadn't cried every night for 3 weeks. The phone rang within an hour of the paper hitting mailboxes. "Susan, it's Janet from the community board." I long pause. "I just wanted to say we're all thinking of you." 2 hours later, someone left a pie on my porch. Nunaj. By noon, I'd received 7 texts, 4 emails, and 1 voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer any of them. I sat at the kitchen table and read the article 3 more times, searching for something redeeming, something human. But all I saw was my daughter's name beside mine, like twin pillars in a structure built from shame. End quote. Linda showed up with a 6-pack of root beer and a bag of pretzels. "Nothing says media storm like carbs," she said, placing them on the table. I handed her the newspaper. "It's public now." "Of course it is. You knew this was coming." I thought I was ready. "You were." I stared out the window. "She's in there, alone. And now everyone else knows too. She won't just be Melissa. She'll be that girl who stole from her mother." Linda popped open a bottle. "Well, she did." "I know," I said. "But I also know that this town, this neighborhood, they don't forget. Ever." Linda leaned back. "And you think you'll be lumped in with her?" I didn't answer. Hendua. The next day, I went to the post office. The clerk, Ryan, had always been friendly, called me Miss. Carter, with a smile, asked about my garden. This time, he barely made eye contact. When he handed me my mail, he cleared his throat. "Tough thing. With your daughter?" "Yeah. I mean, must have been hard. Doing the right thing." "It still is." He nodded, then looked away. I walked out with the mail pressed to my chest. Inside were 2 letters. One from my insurance company, one from an old student. The insurance letter was clinical, informing me that my home policy would be reevaluated due to pending legal concerns. The letter from my student was handwritten. Dear Mrs. Carter, I saw the article. I don't know what to say. Except, you taught me how to face hard truths in 5th grade. I still remember your voice during our class discussion on honesty. Doing what's right will never be as easy as doing what's easy. You said, I've never forgotten that. Just wanted you to know. I believe in you. Love. Chloe Martin. Class of 2008. I sat in the kitchen and cried for the first time in days. Not out of shame, but out of something like grace and 2 days later, I met with Eleanor again. This publicity may work in our favor, she said, sliding a new file across the table. Public sympathy can pressure judges, and her lawyers already floated the idea of a plea deal. Terms: 1 year in county, 5 years probation, full restitution. She can't pay that back. She may not have to, not fully. But we can seek garnishment, seize any assets, and ensure she's not eligible for new credit. It's about boundaries now, not revenge. I nodded. She sent another letter. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Did she? She says she wants to plead guilty. That would save us months of litigation. She asked me to write a statement. For the judge. Eleanor sat back. What would you write? I don't know. Would you recommend leniency? I stared at my hands. I think I'd recommend mercy, I said, but not avoidance. End all a day. That night, I sat down with a fresh sheet of paper. The fireplace crackled behind me. Margaret's photo watched from the mantel. I lit one of her candles, lavender and rosemary, and began to write, To the Honorable Judge Thornton. My name is Susan Carter. I am the mother of the defendant, Melissa Carter. She is also the person who stole over $700,000 from me. I am not writing today to excuse her actions. I am writing to ask that you see her as a whole person. Broken, yes, but still redeemable. Melissa did not become this person overnight, but she chose her actions, and she must face them. I ask that her sentence reflect the seriousness of her crimes, but also offer a path back to accountability, because I still believe, even now, that accountability is the first step toward healing. For her, for me, for everyone she might hurt in the future, if we don't stop this now. Sincerely, Susan Carter. I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. Tomorrow, I'd give it to Eleanor, and maybe, just maybe, I'd sleep. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not just the marble floors and high ceilings, but something in the air. The way people spoke in hushed tones, the way doors echoed when they closed. Linda walked beside me, her steps, sure, her coat pressed, her presence steady. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. My hands were clenched around my purse strap. Inside it, tissues, mints, Margaret's old hand mirror, and the copy of the statement I'd already submitted to the DA. Eleanor met us at the security line. You ready? She asked softly. I didn't answer. I just nodded. 0. We waited in a small side room before being called into the chamber. I could hear the bailiff calling names. Liars murmuring. Papers being shuffled like poker hands. Melissa will be in the room. Eleanor reminded me. But you won't be speaking directly to her. Just to the court. I'll ask you questions. Stay calm. Tell the truth. That's all you need to do. I gripped the edge of the table. What if I shake? You're allowed to shake. What if I cry? You're allowed to cry. I looked up. What if I still love her? Eleanor's voice softened. You're allowed to love her. Ow. They called my name. I walked into the courtroom like I was stepping onto a frozen lake, one foot uncertain after the other. The judge sat high behind the bench. Expression unreadable. The bailiff motioned toward the witness box, and there she was. Melissa, wearing a navy blazer, borrowed, maybe her hair tied back. She looked quiet, smaller than I remembered. Her eyes found mine as I crossed the room. But I didn't stop. I didn't nod. I didn't break. I took the oath, my voice barely steady. Then I sat, folding my hands in my lap. Eleanor stood. Mrs. Carter, can you state your full name for the record? Susan Grace Carter. Your relationship to the defendant. She's my daughter. Did you authorize her to sign your name on any financial documents? No. Did you give her permission to open credit accounts in your name? No. Did you consent to a mortgage being taken out on your home? No. Do you recognize these signatures? She held up a stack of printed forms, each one a duplicate of something Melissa had signed. I leaned forward. They look like mine, but they aren't. How can you tell? Because I've been signing my name the same way for 40 years, and I know when someone's trying too hard. The room was silent. Mrs. Carter, what has the financial impact of these forgeries been on your life? I swallowed. I've lost my retirement savings. I've lost the equity in my home. I've lost the sense of safety. I spent a lifetime building, and the emotional impact. My voice cracked. I lost my daughter. A soft murmur rippled through the courtroom. Eleanor nodded. No further questions. Melissa's attorney didn't cross-examine. IF. Back in the waiting room, I collapsed into the chair. Linda brought me tea from the vending machine. It was terrible, but warm. You did it, she said. I feel like I died in there. No. You lived. You told the truth. That matters. End quote. Later, I stood outside the courthouse, watching as Melissa was led through a side door, escorted by guards. Our eyes met again. For a moment, one brief, sharp moment. I saw something flicker there. Not anger, not regret, something like grief. Then she was gone. Avarosan. That night, I opened my journal, the 14th of January, 2025. I told the court what she did, not because I wanted her punished, but because I wanted her seen. All of her, not just the daughter I raised, but the woman she became, and the choices she made. I still don't know if that makes me a bad mother or a brave one. Maybe both. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, just after I finished folding the laundry. Simple subject line. Proposed plea agreement. Review requested. I stared at it for a long time. The body of the message from Eleanor was clear and professional. Dear Mrs. Carter, the defense has offered a formal plea deal in exchange for your support. Terms. Melissa Carter pleads guilty to all charges. She serves 18 months in a correctional facility, followed by 5 years probation. Full financial restitution agreed to, though actual repayment may be partial based on income. Please review and let me know whether you're willing to provide a supporting statement to the court. This will carry significant weight in sentencing. Sincerely, Eleanor Frost. I reread the words until they blurred. Melissa. Guilty. 18 months. Not 5 years. Not prison bars for the next decade. But time. Real time. And a chance. A structured, legally bound chance to change. AG. Linda came over that night. I handed her a printout of the email and poured us both chamomile tea. She's admitting guilt. I said, that's something. It is. Linda agreed, reading the page carefully. And she's agreeing to restitution. That's something too. But it's not full restitution. It never would have been. I know. Linda sipped her tea. The real question is, what does your gut say? My gut is tired. I don't blame it. I looked toward the mantel. The photos hadn't moved, but they looked different now, as if they, too, had been asked to carry more than they were built for. If she goes to prison longer, I whispered, I'll always wonder if I was the reason her life broke completely. Linda set down her mug. And if she doesn't? Will you always wonder if she learned anything? The silence that followed said more than either of us could. End quote. The next morning, I met Eleanor in her office. I've read the terms, I said, and I'll support them, but on one condition. Eleanor leaned forward. Name it. I want to write a statement. One she has to hear in court. Eleanor nodded slowly. We can arrange that. I want her to know this isn't forgiveness. Not yet. This is accountability, and it's her last chance. I think the court will respect that. I'm not doing this for her. I added, not really. I'm doing it for the girl she used to be, and the woman she still might become. 2 days before the hearing, Melissa wrote again. Dear Mom, I heard about the deal. I know you could have asked for worse. I don't know why you didn't. Maybe you still believe in me. Maybe you're just tired. Either way, I want to thank you. Not for saving me because I don't deserve that, but for making me stop. No one ever really stopped me before. I always talked my way out. Or around. But you didn't let me. And that might be the only real act of love I've been given in years. I'm sorry. Again. Always. Love. Melissa. I folded the letter and placed it beside the others. Not in the safe. Not in the fire. Just there. Visible. But no longer defining. Andy. At the sentencing hearing, the room was smaller than I remembered. Melissa sat beside her lawyer, wearing the same navy blazer from her arraignment. Her hands were folded, her face calm. I was called to the front. The judge, a woman named Patricia Thornton, invited me to read my prepared statement. I took a deep breath and stood. Your Honor, I began. My name is Susan Carter. I am both the victim and the mother of Melissa Carter. I'm here today not to plead for mercy, but to plead for meaning. Melissa's choices caused enormous damage, financial, emotional, personal. She broke the law, and she broke the trust of the person who loved her most. But she also made a choice to stop, to admit, to face the weight of her actions. This plea deal does not erase what she did. It does not fix what was broken, but it does open a door, one I hope she walks through with humility and effort. I support the agreement, but I also ask this court to hold her accountable in every possible way, not out of vengeance, but out of hope. Hope that she will never need to be stopped again by anyone. Thank you. I looked at Melissa once before sitting. She didn't cry, but she nodded. Once, softly, like she understood. Or maybe, finally, she was listening. That night, I walked through my house as if it had just been returned to me. Each room felt lighter, not empty, but aired out. I passed Margaret's photo and smiled. Almost there, I whispered. And for the first time in months, I believed it. The first morning, Melissa was no longer awaiting sentencing. I stood in my backyard and watched the frost melt off the grass. It was a quiet, cold Tuesday. The same yard where she'd once played in the snow, where Margaret had planted roses every spring, now held the kind of silence that only comes after too many words. She was officially in custody now 18 months. Starting immediately, her lawyer said she'd likely be transferred to a minimum security facility within the next week. Not prison in the harshest sense, but it wasn't home. And for the first time, in a long time, neither was she. The days were strangely still. No more phone calls at odd hours. No texts that made my stomach drop. No shadow at the door, asking for just one more favor. The silence felt unnatural at first, like standing in an empty church. But by the second week, I started to breathe more deeply. I made coffee without bracing for a confrontation. I sat on the porch and read again. Really, read. Not just turned pages. The manila folder was moved from the kitchen table to a drawer in my study. Not the safe, not the trash, just away. I didn't need to see it every day anymore. In March, I started volunteering again. Just twice a week at the elementary school library. The kids didn't know me. Their teachers barely remembered me. But the books did. They still smelled the same ink and dust and hope. One afternoon, a little girl in second grade tugged on my sleeve while I was reshelving. "Are you someone's grandma?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not yet." She nodded like that was the right answer, then went back to her storybook. That night, I cried not because it hurt, but because it healed something I didn't know was still broken. "Oh, Vital," Melissa wrote, once a week. The letters were shorter now, less poetic, more honest. "Dear Mom, the food here is awful, but I guess that's not a surprise. I'm reading a lot, mostly things I should have read years ago. They've got this book club going in the unit. You'd like it, or roll your eyes, probably both. I'm still scared, but I think that's normal. I'm working in the kitchen. It's greasy, but they trust me with a knife now. That feels weird, and kind of big. One of the counselors here said something that stuck with me. Accountability isn't punishment. It's direction. I'm trying to take that to heart. I think about you a lot. Hope your garden's doing better than mine. Love, M." I read each one, and placed it in the same drawer as the manila folder, different sides of the same coin. History and maybe future. When? By April. The hydrangeas Margaret had planted started budding again. He spent afternoons pulling weeds, trimming back the dead parts, whispering to the soil like she used to. "I know you're still in there," I said once, hands buried in the earth. "You just need time." I wasn't sure if I was talking to the plants, or to Melissa, or to myself. Daisy. One evening, I took out a small notebook and began to tally the things I had lost. Tsibay, 0-inch financial damage, a mortgage I hadn't asked for, years of trust, a version of my daughter that might never return, peace of mind. Then, slowly, I began a second list. My home still mine, my identity reclaimed, my voice stronger, Linda still here, books steady and comforting, quiet, and not the painful kind, hope small, but real. I closed the notebook, lit a candle, let it burn. Ibu. In May, I attended a community event at the local library. They asked me to give a short talk, nothing dramatic, just a few words about rebuilding. I stood at the lectern, looking at faces that had once whispered behind my back, and said, "Forgiveness isn't forgetting, and healing isn't pretending it didn't hurt. But both are possible, and both begin with the truth. No applause, just silence." And that was enough. End of 4. Melissa's next letter came 2 days later. "Dear Mom, they told me about your talk at the library. Someone posted a quote from it on the community board here. You're getting famous. I keep thinking about the part you said, healing isn't pretending it didn't hurt. End of 6. That's been the hardest part for me. Not the jail, not the food, not even the judgment, but admitting I caused the pain. I did that, and I'm still learning how to live with it. I don't know if you'll ever let me come home, but even if you don't, thank you for letting me try. Love always. M. End of crate. I folded the letter, held it against my chest. Didn't answer it. Not yet. But I didn't throw it away either. It was a Thursday afternoon when I saw her. I almost didn't go to the community event at the library. The flyer had been tucked into my mailbox, announcing a spring reading celebration, a fancy name for coffee, cookies, and local authors selling books no one really read. But something about the sunshine and the way the wind moved through the new green leaves made me put on my floral scarf and walk the 3 blocks to the library. The room smelled like old pages and lemon cleaner. A few folding chairs had been arranged near the front, and a table of paperbacks sat under a banner reading, "Words That Changed Us." I was sipping lukewarm coffee when a young woman walked up to me, her smile hesitant but familiar. "Mrs. Carter?" she asked. I turned, heart pausing. It took me a second to place her, and then I saw it. The eyes, hazel, wide, always curious. "Chloe Martin?" I asked. She beamed. "You remember?" "Of course I do," I said. "5th grade. You wrote that story about the giraffe who wanted to be a violinist." Her laughter was warmer than the coffee. "I can't believe you remember that. I remember every child who loved books." Her smile softened. "You're the reason I write now." He blinked. "You're a writer." She nodded. "Local press mostly. I write profiles. Small features. Some poetry. I even got a fellowship for memoir work last year." "I'm so proud of you," I said. And I meant it. "I never got to tell you this," she said, suddenly serious. "Back when things were hard, when my mom left, you were the only adult who noticed. You let me stay after class. Said I could organize the reading shelf. Remember, you probably thought it was nothing, but it meant everything. I felt my throat tighten. You always said, books won't fix everything, but they'll wait until you're ready to be fixed. I still tell people that." I reached out, touched her hand. "Thank you for coming to say that." She held up a small pamphlet. "I actually wrote about you last month, when the story about your daughter came out." My heart stalled. She handed it over. The headline was small, tucked into the corner of a local literary zine. "The Strength in Stillness." When a teacher becomes the lesson, it wasn't scandal. It wasn't gossip. It was gratitude. A quiet reflection on resilience, truth, and the quiet power of choosing what's right even when it hurts. I folded it carefully, I didn't know anyone would write about me in kindness. I said softly. There's a lot of noise out there. She replied, but some of us still listen closely. End of ass. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, rereading Chloe's article. She'd written, she taught us how to use our words when the world got loud. Years later, she used hers to stop the silence of a crime that could have destroyed her life. She's still teaching us. Just Keter now. The tears that came weren't bitter. They were the kind that washed things clean. To August. 3 days later, I received a letter from Melissa. Dear Mom, there's a poetry night here once a month. It's rough. A lot of broken hearts and awkward rhymes. But last week, someone read a piece about forgiveness that made everyone stop talking. It made me think of you. I don't know if I'll ever earn your full forgiveness, but I want to earn back your time. Not your money, not your name, just your time. Maybe someday, when I get out, we can sit on that old bench by the Hydrangeas and talk like people do when they don't need anything from each other. Just time, just space, just love. If it's still there, I'll wait. Love always. M. End of versand. I folded the letter slowly, looked out the window. The hydrangeas were blooming now, blue and wild. I whispered to the breeze, we'll see. And I meant it. Mornings came earlier these days, light filtering through the curtains at just past 6. Hesitating at the bedside before spilling across the hardwood floor. I stayed in bed too long, listening to the quiet pulse of the house without the hum of worry. The hydrangeas bloomed brighter than I remembered. Stands of blue and lavender framed the window like silent applause. I pressed a palm against the glass, feeling their soft promise. New life, despite everything. At the detention facility, letters from Melissa began to reflect change. Not just remorse, but purpose. Dear Mom, they moved me to a minimum security unit with more responsibilities. I'm helping in the library shelving books, recommending titles to other inmates. It's not heroic work, but it's good work. It feels like contributing. The words we share can reach people, even when they're locked up. I've seen it happen here. Someone borrowed To Kill a Mockingbird after I recommended it. She came back, shining, saying how she scout made her feel brave. Thank you for trusting me enough to let that chance exist. Love, M. Every time I read that letter, I imagined her behind bars, surrounded by whispering pages and small victories. I smiled, one of those slow smiles that come after long years of holding back. Meanwhile, I began going to a reading group at the library, held once a month, with coffee-stained pages and worn chairs. Writers gathered quietly to share stories about loss and second chances. One evening, on author I'd never met read, Healing Isn't Sunshine. It's learning to find light in the darkest room. I traced my finger over the line. If this was a room, it had been dark. But now, I saw glimmers. I worked up the courage to read one of my own journal entries at the next group. With trembling hands, I read aloud. I used to think motherhood meant protecting. Now, maybe it means letting go. Helping her rise even if I have to watch from afar. I looked up after finishing. Faces were wet. Some smiled. One older woman patted my hand. You are doing more than you know, she said. Melissa's next letter arrived on a shirt I was mending. Dear Mom, I read your journal entry. Thank you for sharing it, even though it was hard. That image of you watching me from a dark room, it stopped me. I'm taking classes here, financial literacy and anger management. I know I need them. Most days are quiet, some are terrible, but I'm still here. I miss the old kitchen. Our house will feel different when or if I come back, but I want to come back. If you'll still take me. Not as your daughter needing forgiveness, just as someone who learned to start small. That letter stayed on the bedside table. I didn't touch it for a day. Then, I sat on the porch with the sun warming my shoulders and scribbled a reply. Dear Melissa, starting again is the hardest kind of bravery. Thank you for choosing it. Take your time. I'll be here quietly waiting for you to do it at your pace. Not as the daughter who hurt me, but as the woman trying to find her way back. Love. Always. Mom. Summer rain came. Soft and steady. I spent afternoons in my garden, weeding, planting lavender and daisies. imagining the day when they'd grow wild at Melissa's feet. I hummed Margaret's old lullaby, letting the garden fill with memory and hope. One morning, I met Chloe again at the library. She handed me 2 copies of her zine, one she planned to mail to Melissa, and one she gave me. She said, thought she might like something real in her hands. I nodded, fighting tears. "You're not alone," she said. And in that quiet community without headlines, without Polaroid images, I found connection. Sometimes I volunteered at the food bank. Sometimes I read to children. Each act of small kindness was a petal, building a bloom inside me where loss used to grow. The morning Melissa came home, the sky was gray, not heavy with rain, just dim, like the world was still waking up. I stood outside the small bus terminal on NW 6th Avenue in Portland, holding a thermos of coffee in one hand and a scarf in the other. The wind nipped at my coat, and my heart thudded in quiet rebellion beneath my ribs. She was due to arrive at 8:40 a.m. By 8, censure. I'd already checked the arrivals board 3 times and refolded the scarf twice. My hands couldn't stay still. Neither could my thoughts. What would I say? How do you greet a daughter who betrayed you? How do you welcome her without reopening wounds? At 8, Sishar. The bus hissed to a stop. A handful of people stepped off, college students with backpacks. A mother with a toddler. A man in a flannel jacket. And then, Melissa. Her hair was shorter than I remembered. She wore the same denim jacket from her arraignment day, sleeve pushed up, revealing the thin, a familiar bracelet I once gave her at 16. She carried no luggage, just a canvas tote slung over one shoulder and a paperback sticking out the house on Mango Street, one of my favorites. She saw me, paused, then walked over. We didn't hug at first. We just stood there, 2 women with the same cheekbones and the same hesitance in our spines. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was softer than I remembered. Older. "Hi." I offered her the scarf. "You'll need this." She accepted it wordlessly, wrapping it around her neck. I handed her the thermos next. She took a sip and sighed. "You still make it too strong. I remember you never liked it weak." That earned a small smile, just a flicker, but it was real. End of crate. The drive home was quiet. Melissa stared out the window, fingers resting on her knees, like she was afraid to touch anything. I wanted to reach out. I didn't. "How was leaving?" I asked gently. She glanced over, quieter than I expected. Just one of the girls gave me a card, said I helped her get through the dark parts. I didn't realize I had. "That sounds like something you would do," I said. She looked out the window again, blinking fast. End of frames. When we pulled into the driveway, the hydrangeas were fading, summer's colors slipping into autumn's hush. But they still stood tall, still there. Melissa stared at the house. I thought about this place every day. I didn't answer, just unlocked the door. Inside, everything smelled like lemons and lavender, the scent I'd always used in the kitchen. Melissa paused in the entryway, her gaze sweeping over the photos still on the walls. One of her at 12 arms full of science fair ribbons. Another of Margaret in her blue dress. "You didn't take them down," she whispered. "They're still part of the story." She swallowed hard. "Am I?" I turned slowly to face her. "That's up to you." Melissa. 2. We had lunch in silence. Chicken soup, freshly made that morning. She ate slowly, like she hadn't used a real spoon in a long time. "I was scared," she said finally. "On the bus, I thought maybe you wouldn't be here, that maybe I'd get off and just stand alone." "You won't be alone. Not ever." He hesitated. "Not as long as you keep choosing better." She nodded. "I plan to." Then added, barely audible, "I'm not asking for trust. I just hope you'll let me earn it. I'm willing to try," I said. End quote. Later that afternoon, I showed her the guest room. "I thought maybe you'd want a space of your own," I explained. "No expectations. Just a room. A beginning." She stepped inside and touched the bedspread blue cotton. Simple. Her favorite color as a child. "I don't deserve this," she said. "Maybe not yet," I replied, "but it's here anyway." And each whiles. That night, as I sat reading on the porch, Melissa came out with 2 mugs of tea. She handed one to me and sat down beside me, not close. But not far either. We watched the last light fade behind the trees. "Do you think Margaret would forgive me?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. "I think she'd want you to forgive yourself first." Melissa nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I'm working on it." The morning was crisp. The kind of Portland autumn morning where your breath curls in front of you and the trees look like they've been painted with fire. Leaves rustled under our feet as Melissa and I walked slowly toward the Multnomah County Library. She held onto her canvas tote like it was something sacred, pressed close to her side. Fingers tucked beneath the strap as if letting go might make everything fall apart again. I held my breath as we stepped into the community room, the same room I'd once stood in alone. Reading aloud from my journal, eyes trembling, unsure if anyone would ever understand what it meant to be the mother of a daughter who betrayed everything. This time, I wasn't alone, and she wasn't hiding. Chloe was there first. She looked up from her folding chair, eyes widening as recognition settled in. There was a moment of pause, not fear, not judgment, just a silence that let the moment stretch. Then Chloe smiled and crossed the room without hesitation. She hugged Melissa gently, like someone who knew better than to squeeze too tight. "You came back," she whispered, and Melissa gave the faintest nod. Later, when the reading began, I stood before the group and spoke. "We're not stories. We're works in progress," I said, voice steadier than I expected. "And today, we stand here not as victims or offenders, but as humans choosing new chapters." Melissa reached for my hand beneath the table. That small gesture spoke louder than any sentence I could have written. 2 days later, on Sunday morning, we walked into our old church. The sanctuary was filled with golden light filtering through stained glass, warm, familiar. For a moment, we just stood in the vestibule. Melissa's hands trembled slightly. I gently touched her back and led her forward. No one whispered. Mrs. Harland, who used to teach Melissa in Sunday school, brought a casserole after the service, setting it beside the donation basket without a word. "Mr. Ryan from the post office tipped his hat in our direction. It wasn't celebration. It wasn't coldness. It was quiet acceptance, just enough to let the walls inside both of us drop half an inch. Under the old oak tree afterward, Melissa exhaled. "That was hard," she said, her voice tight with everything unsaid. "That was brave," I answered, and meant it. Sometimes, showing up is the loudest kind of courage. That evening, we went to the supermarket for groceries. A normal task, but it felt like walking across a stage. Fluorescent lights, carts squeaking, the quiet chatter of strangers moving around us. Inail 10, while I was picking out carrots. Ane Barbara, I think, paused beside us. She held a bag of apples. Her expression, unreadable at first. Then she looked directly at Melissa. "Sarah," she said, her voice gentle. I nodded, unsure what was coming. "I read your story," she continued. "Saw that article someone clipped to the board at the library. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you." She turned to Melissa. "Of both of you," and then she pushed her cart forward, leaving us standing there in stunned silence. Melissa turned to me, eyes wide with disbelief. "Did that really just happen?" I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, it did." In that moment, the world didn't feel so loud anymore. That night, we sat together on the porch, teacups warm between our palms, and let the silence fill with something softer than regret. It wasn't joy. Not exactly. But it was peace. Melissa leaned back in her chair, watching the last of the sunset disappear behind the neighbors' rooftops. "You think people really change?" "Mom," she asked after a long pause. I thought for a moment. "I think people choose. Again and again. And sometimes, if we're lucky, the world gives us the chance to do it out loud." She didn't say anything else, but she reached for my hand again, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't flinch. I held it tightly and let the evening wrap around us like a second chance. The first time I returned to Margaret's photo on the mantel after everything, I felt as though I was greeting a long-lost friend. Her soft smile, clear in that blue dress, held all the memories of laughter, gentle guidance, and the love that had once built our family. Months had passed since Melissa came home. The hydrangeas bloomed riotously, pastel clouds of hope in the front yard. Inside, the house had filled again with sound. with cooking smells, with stories. But today, all of that was quiet. I sat in the living room with a notebook, lights from an autumn afternoon dancing on the pages. I wrote with a careful hand, "Healing doesn't erase loss. It's about planting again where the ground once broke." Bezid Musat Melissa, reading quietly. She looked up at the word healing, but didn't say a thing. So I closed the notebook. Later, we walked to the community garden, a place Margaret had adored, where she taught me names of plants long before I taught them to Melissa. We carried a small bag of daisy seedlings, flowers Margaret loved. We kneeled among the rows and pressed the soil around them, side by side, hands almost brushing. Melissa paused, then exhaled. "I'm sorry for what I broke." I paused, then took her hand. "I know," I said, "and I forgive you for choosing to be here now." Tears gathered, but not of heartbreak. They were the kind that water new growth. What did you feel while listening to this story, all the way through? If it touched your heart, leave the number 1 inch the comments. If you didn't feel connected to it, feel free to write 0. Every piece of feedback means a lot to me, because it's thanks to you that I can keep going. It's from your responses that I draw the energy to tell the next chapter a new story is coming, even deeper, even more moving. And I truly hope you'll be there to listen with me.